Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Everybody's talking about boundaries. The empaths are talking about boundaries. The people pleasers are talking about boundaries. Even the narcissists are talking about boundaries, though we've kind of stopped listening to them by now. So I wanted to add another thing about boundaries, because just because everyone's talking about them doesn't mean they're easy. And there's three really good reasons why boundaries aren't easy to set. And I'm going to give you one solution for how you can do the work to actually come from a place where you don't even need to set boundaries. It's very, very different. But first of all, I'm sure we've all had the experience of like thinking, damn it, next time I see that person, I'm going to set a boundary. And then we come up and meet that person and we don't even set the boundary, or even worse, we kind of apologize. We kind of go, look, you can't do that anymore. And then you say, oh, actually, I'm sorry for saying that. And then they say something and you go, look, I'll do it straight away. And then afterwards you're like, oh, why did I do that? So I'm here to give you three reasons which might help explain why those things happen and then what we can do about it, okay? So first of all, one of the big reasons that we have trouble setting boundaries is because we actually value being loved, being liked, and we want to avoid being rejected more than we care about setting the boundary, which is actually something to do with ourselves. This goes especially for our friendship circle and especially for our workmates, which are like little tribes that we belong to. And at a core level, I'm sure you all know this, it's baked into our DNA that being with a tribe means surviving. Dr. Gabor Mate describes it as this original wound where we sacrifice authenticity for attachment, which essentially means that we sacrifice our essential self to remain attached to our primary caregivers, and this pattern continues in our life. On the evolutionary biological aspect, basically, we were all coded to belong to a tribe. That's how we survived as a species. And if you were different, if you were more authentic, say, then you were either the king or queen of the tribe, or you were outcast, and that meant you were going to die. So it's a very, very strong pull within us to want to belong and to want to be liked. It's very, very natural. So that's the first reason. The second reason is there's a power dynamic, right? Now, I don't care how many crystals you have. I don't care if you're wearing your lucky tourmaline bracelet, what card you pulled, or what mantra you're saying. If a policeman pulls you over, if you have a meeting with the vice president, or you're hanging out with some men with guns, any boundaries you try and set are just not going to work. There's a big power dynamic there. And so you are actually very wise to respond and acknowledge that power dynamic. There's a sense of safety baked into that, which brings me to my third point. There's a level of safety coded under everything. So we might find it hard to set a boundary with our boss, for example, because ultimately, if they're not willing to receive our boundary, we might lose our job, which means we're out of work, which means we've got no cash, which means all these things are linked to survival. Cash is very closely linked to survival. Similarly, if you set a boundary with your friends, your partner, your workmates, and they end up rejecting you or excluding you from certain things, or even worse, breaking up with you, it feels dreadful. Okay, that's a sensation that we want to avoid. And ultimately, it can be linked to a sense of personal safety. So safety, a power dynamic, and wanting to be liked or to belong to the group. So three reasons why it's difficult to choose ourselves and to set a boundary. If you want to do the work, what you can do is to spend some time considering, okay, why do I want the attachment or the approval of this group of people? And what is so difficult about setting this boundary for me? Consider what you feel, consider what images you're relating in your head with, and consider what you're saying to yourself. And then ask yourself, what am I actually really afraid of? When you've got a sense of that, you can ask yourself, how is this fear trying to help me? And then, is there a better way that I can help myself instead of feeling this fear? because the fear has a positive intention, right? And then when we ask, well, what's another way that I can fulfill that positive intention without going into this kind of spin, then we're really onto something. There's a whole other beautiful piece, which I'll talk about later, around exactly that point. And then finally, you want to remind yourself, I am safe, I am ultimately in control, I am loved, and I am loving. And from this place of connection with yourself and to your own sovereignty, you may find that instead of going to your next conversation thinking, I've got to set a boundary, you may just be acting from a depth of self-love and sovereignty such that either the other person naturally responds to that in you, or you are effortlessly communicating how you expect to be treated and what you expect from the relationship without having to go in and set a boundary. It's a very different way of being in the world. So if you want to chat more about this or more about what this might look like specifically for you, then get in touch, drop me a comment below, or just ask me a question. You'll find me on all the socials, and I hope this was really useful.